Okay, here's a review for domain and range. So this one's kind of weird because it's like we have to review and practice essentially at the same time. So really your review is, what does domain and range even mean? So your domain is all possible x values of a function. And then range is talking about all possible y values of a function. And a helpful hint is that we always go from the smallest value to the largest value when we think of these. So determine the domain and range of the following function. So if I look at problem number 1, and I'm trying to find the domain, I'll do all my domains in blue. Domain is all of possible x values. So if I look at the x-axis, that goes from left to right. So I'm really thinking about this square root function. How far to the left can I go, and how far to the right can I go? So one thing I notice on this function is I see that arrow pointing to the left. An arrow means that's going to continue on forever. So I can go forever to the left, which some people like to, instead of drawing it up there, draw it down there on the x-axis. Or just thinking about it instead of drawing. Either way, totally up to you. And then if I look how far right I can go, if I follow this function, it stops right at that point. So I can go all the way up until that x value. And now it's all the way back to middle school, really. And how do we write that as an inequality? So if I think about my number line I just created, that x value right here is 1, 2, 3, and it has a closed circle. And then I can go all the way to the left. So if I write that as an inequality, it's x is less than or equal to 3. Friendly reminder, let's pretend that was an open circle, so it looked like that. If that happened, that means that point cannot be included, so it would be if x is less than 3. So that's the difference between when do I include that equal sign underneath and when do we not. But in this case, it is open, or sorry, it is closed, so it will have the equal to sign. And I'm actually going to go and do all the domains first and then come back to the ranges. So my domain on the second problem, I'm again looking from left to right. So one of the things I notice is there's that arrow again on the left, but now it's also happening on the right. So that means this function goes all the way to the left and all the way to the right. When that happened, I'm shading or including every single number. So we call that all real numbers. Excuse me. Which we can also abbreviate. You can make an uppercase R with an extra line. Okay. Then that last one, domain again. So remember left to right, because that's the way the x-axis travels. I notice that arrows on the left and the right again. So this means I can go all the way left and all the way right. So that's all real numbers. Okay. There's my domain. To help me not get confused, I'm going to erase my work for domain when I talk about range. That way we don't get tempted to look at that. So range is my y values, and if I look at my y axis, that goes up and down. And if I think about small to large, small's down here. So I'm actually going to go down to up. So what's the lowest point I have and what's the highest point I have? So if I do that to this graph, it looks my lowest point. Well, first I see an arrow. Oops, I don't want that. I want a highlighter. Arrow. So that means one of the directions is going to go on forever and ever. So I have to figure out, do I have a highest or lowest point? And when I look here, I can see the lowest point is right there, which is at the value of 5. And then it goes up from there. So if I think about going up on a number line, Here's 5. It's that closed circle again, which we can go above too if that helps you visualize it. And all the other numbers are up or greater. So if I make a inequality for that, y is greater than or equal to 5. Okay. This one, smallest to highest, I see arrows, so I know that one of the directions, at least one of the directions, is going to be going on forever. So I look for the lowest. I don't have a lowest point since those arrows mean it's going to decrease forever, left and right. So then I see my highest point is right here, which has a y value of 1. The biggest thing that I see students doing is that they actually look at the x value instead. So make sure you're always looking at the y value for ranges. That's a closed circle because I don't see open. And then if I look at all the other y values, like here's -1, -2, -3, those are all smaller than 1. So my range there is going to be y is less than or equal to 1. And then finally, if I look at my lowest value here, my lowest is at that vertex, which makes sense because the vertex should be a minimum or a maximum. And then everything else is above that, which makes sense because I see arrows pointing up. So my lowest value for y, and remember we're looking at the y value, not the x, is -3. And there's your domain and range.